everybody. Today is the summary for our lesson for Tuesday, August 29th. If you were absent, we started notes on the human brain. So you can go to today's folder in Schoology. You will see the PDF. Go ahead and put those in GoodNotes and then follow along with this summary. If you want a hard copy but you were absent, my recommendation is go ahead and watch the video so you know where we're at, and then next time you come to class you can ask for a hard copy. Then you'll have to come back and watch the video again to make sure that you've got everything filled out. Okay, so first things first, I showed the kids an app that is on your iPad. You're going to have to go to self-service and then download the app called 3D Brain. This is not anything you need for class. It's just a tool that you can use when you're studying the brain and the parts of the brain, especially the different lobes and the lymphatic system, which is on the three structures that we're going to talk about on the inside of the brain. So the kids just took a couple minutes to play around with that. It's kind of cool, really fun, great tool for studying. All right, so we went ahead and we started our notes on the human brain. I've got this YouTube video. It's very short. It just sort of introduces the brain. So if you'd like to go watch that, you can. Otherwise, just pulling from that short video, this is a picture of the human brain. And you'll notice that it has like a little covering on it. That's called the dura mater. And it just sort of keeps everything together. You might notice that there's some blood vessels on the surface. That's normal. However, if you were to cut into the brain, there just are not very many blood vessels at all. A couple little facts about the brain. It is a wet, fragile mass that weighs just about 3 pounds. That's it. It's about the size of a large grapefruit. And in fact, if you can put your fingers together, like make a fist with both hands, and then put the knuckles of both hands together so you've got this really tight two halves, if you would. It's a model of a brain. And that's about the size of your brain, just the size of your hands put together like that. It's shaped like a walnut in the shape, but also in the ridges of the walnut shells. Brains have these like ridges and concaved areas, and it can fit in the palm of your hand. So this is the size of an adult brain, and this adult is holding it with one hand. So it's amazing for how small it is, how incredibly important it is to our lives, and how many functions it's responsible for, how many trillions of connections that it makes. It is it's no pun intended, but it's mind-blowing. So somebody asked me prior to us starting in your KWL, when I said, what are some things that you want to learn about the brain? Somebody said, like, how much energy does the brain require? So I found this little bit of information. The brain represents about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes nearly 20% of our calories. So if you have an intake, a caloric intake of about 2,000 calories a day, 400 of those calories just go to the brain so that you can walk and talk and breathe and your heart can beat and you can all of those nerve impulses are going back and forth, and you're receiving stimuli and you've got reaction to that stimuli. So it's pretty amazing how much energy is actually required. And that's why I'm going to go back real quick. We talked very quickly in class about why that's so important, especially right now in your teenage years, your formative years. That you guys are eating really healthy, you're making good choices. Absolutely, there are foods that make a difference to your brain. You want foods that are good, healthy fats like avocados and fish oil, and you want like blueberries and salmon, and oatmeal is very good for your brain. So just really good food so that you can power your brain. All right, so the brain is actually divided into two sections. That top part, that's kind of the reddish pink part, that's called the cerebrum. The cerebrum is further broken down into the lobes, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then underneath the brain, you've got this kind of wrinkly little structure. It's very wrinkled. See how the ridges are much tighter? It looks like you've been sitting in a bathtub for a long time and your thumb is all shriveled up. And so that is the cerebellum. Okay, those are the two sections that your brain is divided into. In this diagram, we also have the brain stem. The brain stem is not considered part of the brain. So if I were to ask you on a test, let's say the question is, there are 3 sections to the brain: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brain stem. Would you say that was true or false? I hope you said that was false, because there are only 2 sections of the brain: the cerebrum and the cerebellum. All right, this is the first thing that I'm going to have you do with your notes. Flip back to the very last page in your notes. If you have the digital copy in GoodNotes, you're going to have to push the 3 buttons in the top right, and then it says rotate page. Go ahead and push that, and then rotate 90 degrees, and it'll move it, it'll rotate it so you can color that correctly, okay? All right, so I'm going to have you guys look at the cerebrum. Remember, that was this pink section here, the cerebrum. We've divided it into 4 sections now. So if you look at the cerebellum, in this picture it's blue, in this picture it's blue. The cerebellum is its own little section of the brain. But the cerebrum is divided into 4 sections, and they're called different lobes. Let me show you. Don't start coloring yet. Just let me have your attention here for a second. So in the front, the yellow part is the frontal lobe. And then we have the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. Here's what I need you to do, especially if you're a kinesthetic learner. You have to touch the parts of your head where you would find these lobes, because that's really going to help your brain to remember where these lobes are. So the front lobe, put your hand right on the top part, kind of your forehead part of your brain. That's the frontal lobe. The parietal lobe, go ahead and use both hands. You're going to put it at the very top of your head. The temporal lobe, put your hands, bring them down lower. And in fact, if you just want to use your fingertips to touch your temple, but if you're using all 4 of your fingers on both hands, your hand is kind of spread out a little bit. So right by your temples, this is the temporal lobe. And then in the very back of your head, if you feel that ridge, it's called the occipital bone in your skull, where it kind of goes, it jets out, but then it dips in again. That's the occipital bone. Put your hand right there. That is the occipital lobe of your brain. So you have a diagram that I need you to color. Go ahead and color those sections. Can I give you a clue? This is going to make it a little bit easier. I purposely did not section these out because I want you to try and figure the regions, okay? So it's pretty easy to look on your diagram and identify where the frontal lobe is. So start with the frontal lobe. And then I want you to skip the next 2, go all the way back to the occipital lobe. So the occipital lobe just kind of is a triangle shape. It goes from the top to the bottom right to the cerebellum. And so that's easy to section off. Next, go to the temporal lobe, section that off. And then lastly, whatever's left over will be your parietal lobe. So on your diagram, you're going to see, on your diagram, you're going to see that you've got some sections. I don't think I included it. Nope, I didn't include it in this slideshow. That's okay. You've got some lines pointing to these sections. And I want you to label them, okay? So you've got your frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. Underneath, you have the cerebellum. And then lastly, you do have the brain stem. The brain stem, we colored purple, okay? I want to tell you, when it comes time for the test, and your test will be not next week, but the week after that. When it comes time for your test, you will not be allowed to use your notes. However, I am going to give you this blank document. So this diagram that you have in your packet, in your notes packet, I'm going to give that to you blank. And that will be a part of your test. So you will be able to color that in and label it, and then you can use that to help yourself out. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. If you were absent today, this is what I need you to have done in your notes before we start tomorrow. If you just needed to review, I hope you have the colors and the labels that you need. If you have any other questions, come see me tomorrow. All right? Have a great day. See you later.